Hey everybody, it's John DePietro, and that's not John DePietro you're looking at by any means. But if I turn the camera on me, I won't be able to learn how to turn it back to our special guest, Mr. Barry OBrien. And Barry, just like me, has spent pretty much most of your career in radio and associated fields, and you're back home.
Don't forget, I was a milkman.
That's right, you were a milkman too. You remind people of that every time on Facebook that you started out. What was the dairy in Lapson's?
Well, I worked for Lapson's
Lapson's
in Worcester, but I also worked for Whiting's.
Okay, so Barry's back up here in Massachusetts. Barry,
only for
temporarily.
a week.
Yeah.
Don't get
well,
too excited.
Barry heard that the temperature last Friday was 82 degrees, so he said it's a good time to jump on that JetBlue flight from Fort Lauderdale and go right into Worcester. And today, thanks to Mother Nature, it was 28 degrees.
Yeah.
So Barry, you know what? We've been around this radio biz a long time, and when we had dinner here at this restaurant, we talked about a lot of the interesting characters that you get to meet. And you've been around longer than me. Anyone in well, you had lunch. You're having lunch or dinner every day this week.
I know, yeah, I'm eating my way through Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had lunch with Jay Williams today.
Yeah, Jay was my boss at WVBF in the early, right through the 70s. They moved him from Indianapolis to be sales manager of the station, and then he became general manager, and then I moved down to Washington, D.C. to work at Q107 radio, but Jay stayed on, and he ended up owning a bunch of radio stations. He owned WXLO.
XLO right here in Worcester, yep.
Yeah, and I don't remember what other I think he owned some up in New Hampshire, and then he owned a company called I think it was Direct Marketing.
Oh yeah, one of those. Yep.
Out in Cincinnati.
DRM or something like
that.
Yeah, Direct Results Marketing.
Something like that. They were one of my clients. I sold them advertising in radio and records. But so I saw him today, and I saw Tim Hanna, who owned Timothy's too, and Ken's Steakhouse, and he had been my client for a long time. Great guy. Hadn't seen him for a long time.
And what was I going to say? And then this weekend you're going to a wedding of one of our both of our colleagues, Tony Francischelli.
Yeah, his daughter, my godchild, is getting married tomorrow night, and going to go up to Maine to see my sister. I'll probably see Bob Fuller up there. Bob owned Fuller Jeffrey broadcasting stations with J.J. Jeffrey. So yeah, I feel radio was such a part of my life, my blood, that it extends into your personal relationships,
right. Oh, absolutely.
And you know their families
absolutely.
And everything,
I mean, you sold radio for a while, but I mean the bulk of your career was in the media business, the radio side with Radio and Records. Talk about that publication, which is now moved on to other aspects.
It's gone to heaven.
It's gone, yeah. It's gone along with amusement business and many other trade pubs, but tell us what you did there, because that was really cool. You got to be in radio, but not be in radio.
Yeah, that was I was selling for Q107 Radio in Washington, owned by ABC, and we went from like 17th place to number 2, and it was great. It was a great adventure.
Okay, stop. You went from 17th place to number 2.
Yeah.
Was there then an Arbitron investigation to figure out how you did that?
I don't know. I wasn't involved in
okay.
it. I do know that we raised the rates quite significantly. I'll tell you that. And but I'll tell you, it was more fun selling it when it was 17th. You weren't selling it by the numbers.
Right.
But one of the areas that I covered was Richmond, Virginia, because when you're at a radio station in Washington D.C., a lot of the ad agencies for the banks and like the state lottery, King's Dominion,
the amusement
that
park.
all came out of Richmond, Virginia. So they paid for me to go down there. I'd go down
90 miles, right? 90 miles.
90 miles. But I had a little expense budget, so I'd go down and stay there. And I befriended, there was another top 40 station down there called Q94, which was owned by Hart Hanks Communications. And it was a similar formatted station. And when you got down to around Fredericksburg, you'd lose Q107 and you could pick up Q94. So I walked in one day and introduced myself to Phil Goldman, who was the general manager of the station, and I said, hey, I can help you with business in D.C., and you can help me in Richmond, and we became very close friends. I hired his daughter years later at R&R, but he went to some management meeting for Hard Hanks, and at that time, Hard Hanks also owned Radio and Records, the trade publication. They were based in Los Angeles, and they were looking to do more ad sales on the East Coast. So he gave them my name, and they contacted me, and they were based in Los Angeles, and virtually all of their advertising business, it was a tabloid newspaper. This was in 1980, 81. There was no internet, there were no fax machines, there were no cell phones. So it was a print publication. And the bulk of their advertising came from the record companies, which was sold in Los Angeles.
Yep, trying to reach the radio personnel to say, play this
the
record.
program directors and the general managers. It was more of a programming publication. But they decided that they could, it was very much of a cyclical business. You'd go through urban cowboy and, and the record business would be gangbusters, and then it would be in a slump. Or they realized they didn't have any business from the radio side of it. They didn't have any of the radio networks. They didn't have, and that was all mostly based on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So as they started talking to me, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I said, it seems to me that if we actually went to ABC Radio and asked them to buy ads, they'd probably buy more ads than if we just wait for them to pick up the phone.
Right.
So
a novel thought.
Yeah, right.
It's a sales,
thought.
right?
So I covered that from Washington. I went back. I had an office in New York, but I lived in Maryland, worked in Washington, D.C., and I called on all those companies, whether it was banks that finance radio stations, program suppliers, program syndicators. It wasn't just in New York. I mean, Dallas was a big market for us. We did get some business out of Washington, D.C., but that just happened to be where we had a bureau and where I happened to be living at the time. But it was a wonderful time. They gave me a very big travel budget. I flew all over the country, went to great conventions, Las Vegas, plenty of times.
Plenty of times. Got to meet Mike Kanosian, right?
Oh, yeah. Mike's from Worcester, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Worcester people. It's amazing the number of people that you run into in your hometown, even when you're, hundreds or not thousands of miles away.
Oh yeah.
Radio's a changed business now. It's the small town single station or 5 or 6 station. Like when I worked for night quality stations, they had 7 or 8 stations. They've all been gobbled up by the big guys, and it seems that the emphasis now is all on digital and direct marketing as opposed to traditional radio that we grew up with. Evolution of broadcasting, would you say?
Yeah, it's the evolution of music, the evolution of news dissemination. People have so many choices these days. I mean, how many news stories have you heard where you didn't hear it on the radio or the television, you got it on your cell phone?
Right.
Now maybe that cell phone alert was generated by a TV station or a radio station or a newspaper or something, but it's just changed tremendously. I shared with you, I was interviewed by my 10-year-old nephew last night on his father's, he was my great nephew.
Yeah.
His father has an amazing video production in his basement. And here's this 10-year-old kid knows exactly what he's doing.
He's got the headset on, he's got the mic.
So, I mean, you've got people like that who can disseminate news, information, true or false, to the whole world.
And the fact that we're doing this broadcast at a restaurant with amazing lighting, quality sound, that one generation ago would need the big remote truck.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, when you take the 50 or 60,000 people who are going to be watching this.
Right. Well, they probably already are. I mean, if we were live, we would probably be burning up the
we're not live?
The phone.
But I mean, it would be taking away from the listenership, viewership, readership of other There's only so many things that
Right.
people can do at any
Yep.
one time.
Hey.
It's all getting very, very fragmented.
You said people get their news different ways now. Last night at 11 o'clock, I got an alarm on my phone, and I said, uh-oh, something's wrong with one of my kids or something like that. It was the fact that the Texas Rangers had won their first World Series
Right.
ever.
Right.
And, in the olden days, 10 years ago, I would have had to wait until the next morning, or I could have awakened and put on Sports Center. Or even older than that, waited until I got the morning newspaper. But now
When
I know
was
it
in school,
instantly.
I was saying this to my friends last night. When I was in school here in Holden, Massachusetts, well, we're in West Boylston now, but they would have the World Series was on the loudspeaker in the classroom.
That's right. They used
Because
to play
the
day
games.
games.
The games are in
Right.
the daytime. It
Yep.
was that important.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, look at obviously the baseball industry is going through similar challenges to radio, whatever. I mean, why should radio be exempt from from all the challenges that every other
Yep.
industry is doing? If
Yep.
if you think Walmart isn't challenged, of course it is. Every industry is, and a lot of that now. I mean, any observations that I can make on radio are really more as an
Outsider, yeah.
observer.
Yeah.
I really don't have anything to do with it now, other than as a listener. I live in West Palm Beach.
And that's what I want you to do, is bring me up to date what you're doing now, because that hat you have on, tip your head down a little bit.
Yes.
The hat. The Ben. Now, you're the general manager of the Ben?
Well,
Or what is the Ben first?
I'm the general manager of the transportation services.
Okay. Which is what?
The Ben is a Marriott branded. It's their Bonvoy group, so it's a very upscale group of hotels that they have.
Autograph group. or
And
something
it
like that.
is in downtown West Palm Beach. It's right over the Intracoastal from Palm Beach. So I work for a company called Circuit, which is a last mile transportation company. We have battery operated, they're kind of golf cart
Yeah.
sort of things.
Those Polaris. Polaris cars.
They're registered, they have insurance, they have lights and horns and license. And I sold I sold the service to the Ben Hotel to provide a shuttle for all of their guests. So I drive that on Friday nights and Sundays, and just to kind of stay busy. But
So-
the Ben, it's a wonderful hotel. If you're going to West Palm Beach, that's the place to go.
So they'll go from there to like a restaurant, then you'll pick
Yeah,
them
we
up
take
at the
them over to
restaurant.
Palm Beach. What people love about it is, I had a guy from Tampa with his wife. He said he used to stay over in Palm Beach all the time, down in the south part, and they would go to the middle part of the downtown area in Palm Beach to go to dinner. And he said, I was always scared. He said, I don't drink a lot, but I'd have a couple of drinks.
I wanna
and
drive,
I'm
yeah.
driving by Mar-a-Lago, and I got all the Palm Beach police. He said, "But just my luck, I'll get pulled over."
Yep.
He said, now I stay at the Ben Hotel. It's right across the water from Palm Beach. We just walk out the front door, get in the little golf cart, you bring us over there. We have a wonderful dinner, have a few cocktails, come back. It's great,
Perfect.
But so I mean, there's another business that is being challenged. I am assuming that Circuit, we're in like 20 different markets around the country. Well, we got to be taking business from Uber. We got to
Yep.
be taking business from taxi companies,
cab drivers,
whatever.
sure.
But it's not like it's right or it's wrong. There are
Yep.
certain things that make sense
More
at certain
choices.
times, and then as times change, businesses have the opportunity to change with the times, and many businesses find it very, very difficult to make the change.
And
And
the-
it's not always
No.
apparent what you should do. You can't just blame people and say, "Oh, you should have done that." Well, yeah, hindsight is 100%, but
Yep.
we don't always know how things are going to happen. Who would have thought that so much would be coming from these devices, these phones,
Which
that
we're-
changed our lives?
We are broadcasting this event on right now. I mean, through a phone.
You don't need a radio station license. You don't need a TV station license to do the things that you used to do there.
And we can swear.
We can do anything we
We
want.
can swear. You want to swear?
Yeah.
No,
Not really.
No, but
I might have a nephew.
Right. The funny thing is this: is we're in a restaurant, and people are walking by us and saying, "Wait a minute, these guys mustn't like each other. They're not talking to each other.
I don't
They're
like
talking
you.
to
You like
through
me.
a
I don't like you.
through a phone." But I know you got a couple more days up here, then back to the nice warm weather. And we want to say it's always a pleasure to get together with you. We were able to do so when we were in West Palm a couple years ago, and
We'd love to have you down there. Love to have you.
Now
West
that
Palm
we're-
is booming. I'll
now
tell
that
you.
we're fully retired, and we're going to have to make it down this winter.
Yeah.
So Barry O'Brien, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.